You want to create long stories. You want to create a continuity between your stories. You want to create a series. How do you do it? Here are 6 surprising ways to create a series. The first way is the way of opposition. It's the simplest way to create an episode, a chapter, or a scene. A character is opposing another character. Both of them are trying to reach an outcome, but there's a conflict between. The second way is the way of rescue. In the continuity of opposition, a character may need to save another character from a third character. Now what matters here is who's the sponsor, who has sponsored the rescue. The third way is the discovery. Now, similar to the rescue, the sponsor is important. If the character are not trying to discover a location or an item for themselves, they should be doing it for someone else. Who's this person? The fourth way is the way of collection. Much like discovery, the collection is commanditated. Most often, characters will have to collect items for someone else. Now, the main difference is that this collection does not imply that they recover the items. They just need to get them, not necessarily to get them back. The fifth way is the way of investigation, which will be followed by the sixth way, negotiation. Both of them have one trait in common. They are dialogue heavy, and they are search heavy in a very little and restricted space. Now, the main difference between investigation and negotiation is that negotiation will be a lot more straightforward, whereas investigation will be a full-blown research. You can't count on anyone in an investigation, whereas in a negotiation, there may be some stakeholders who are likely to give you some valuable pieces of information voluntarily. As you advance through your story, in order to establish a diversified rhythm, you want to get from one type of episode, one type of chapter, to the next, and then change. You can follow this cyclical pattern, but you can also pass from an opposition type of chapter or episode to a collect chapter or episode in order to create more contrast between the episodes, between the location, between the character you're presenting, between the concept you're presenting. You can also combine opposite episodes. You can combine a discovery and negotiation in order to create a new type of episode and bring even more diversity to your series. So, combining episodes and shifting this preordained pattern will bring more diversity and a more sustainable rhythm to your series. Now you've established that. You want to get the structure of each episode. Each episode or chapter or scene even will follow the same structure. Now we'll simplify that when we'll present to you each of these kind of adventure, each of this kind of stories, by removing the characters and location part, which will be fine-tuned by you later. So the sequence we'll follow here will be the sequence started by the outcome. Now, as per usual, you want to start with the end in mind. And here the end, the outcome, is the very name of the story. For example, the end of the opposition is when the opposition has been achieved, when you've neutralized the threat, when you've neutralized the menace. So you start with the outcome in mind, and the outcome here is the name of your story, the kind of story you're trying to write. When you decide of the location, afterwards you need to establish the stakes, and again it's the same for each kind of episode, each kind of story. You'll have stakes established fairly early, just after establishing the location. We tend to establish stakes after location because most often location establishes the stakes. Most stakes are location dependent. Sometimes stakes will be character dependent, but most of the time you want to make use of the location in order to create more individuality in your story. Then we go through the issue, so we present the issue. Then the stakeholders or the characters and the creatures, the elements which will cause the issue or which have already caused the issue, and after that, the resolution. So when you have the structure clearly, so outcome, stakes, issues, and resolution, you can start writing any episode, because all of them will be written in this very same manner. The first type of story you may want to write will be an opposition type of story. Now, opposition could be the first type of story you want to write because they're the easiest, or they may be the first one you may want to write because they get the attention of the public more easily. So whichever the reason, even maybe because they're more familiar, maybe because they're easier to write, or maybe because you want to establish a rhythm with them, opposition will often be the first way you start a story. Now, what do we do here? We want to prevent someone from reaching a certain outcome. Now, who is this person? And why should it be prevented? Why should this individual impeached? What's the issue here with this individual? So we should know the identity of the individual. We should know the goal of the individual, or at least the apparent goal, in order to be able to justify our neutralization, and also in order to understand how we'll neutralize this individual, because now we must know her strengths and her weaknesses. So you present your antagonist here, antagonist goal, antagonist strengths, antagonist weaknesses, and eventually her quirks. And then once it's done, how will she and how has she been eliminated? So you have to ask yourself two questions here. How much of an emergency does this situation represent? And how does the solution concern the situation? So how our reaction is appropriate to the situation. Finally, once it's done, you have to ask yourself, was it proportionate? Most of the time it will happen after it's done, because there's a sense of emergency that you've presented since the beginning of the episode, since the beginning of the chapter. So now the characters will have most often to think about the consequences of what they've done after it's done, because it's your first chapter. If oppositions appear in later chapters in your story, they can think about proportion regarding their new attack, their new opposition, their new elimination, because there's a precedent. But in the first chapter, it's highly unlikely, because the character don't have experiences of this kind of crisis. The second type of story you'll want to tell will be a story of rescue. Now, following the opposition principle, someone, an individual, tries to attain a certain outcome, and this outcome should be prevented. Sometimes this outcome will be attained by capturing someone else. So we have at least three types of characters here, or three groups. We have your protagonist, we have the antagonist or perpetrator, and we have a victim, which is captured. Now, there's a lot of variation here, especially if you want the victim to be the true antagonist later in the story. Maybe you've seen our episodes on the menace and how to establish the menace. And if you didn't, we'll give you a link here, and there will be a card on the screen right now. If you try to establish a menace type of antagonist, you may want to turn the victim into this menace later in the story, or you may want to reveal the identity of the menace, which was the initial victim. But in most cases, in the most straightforward situation, you have your protagonist, which is mandated to rescue the victim. You have the victim, and you have the antagonist, which is the perpetrator of the capture, the capturer. Here, you have to ask yourself, who is this victim? And what's a relationship with your sponsor, the person who is mandated you to save her, to rescue her? Then you have to ask yourself, where can you find this person? Now, generally the sponsor will have given you a location or clues to find the location, and your characters can find additional clues on the way to this location. Then how will they penetrate this place? Can they enter this place easily? Is the victim detained here illegally or legally, or with the authority of any kind of organization? Because entering the place may be easy. Entering the place may be easy, then protecting the victim may be easy and or difficult, and escaping the place may be easy and or difficult. So you have 3 steps where you have to check the level of difficulty you want to put in your story. So finding the place, easy or hard, protecting the person, easy or hard, and escaping, easy or hard. You choose. You create your balance here. Then how do you protect the person? So the victim will have weaknesses. She'll have strengths also. She can help your team. She can help your protagonist team to escape with her. And she can even give her some advantages. She can maybe join them later. But she'll predominantly here have weaknesses in this specific environment. And that's why presenting the environment first is essential. In this specific environment, because of the duresses of this environment, she'll be weak and she'll need your help to escape. Now, how do you escape? Well, you need a plan. You need a literal plan of the location. Again, establishing the location since the beginning of this episode of this story is essential. And then you have to ask yourself, where do we escape? Or which road, which path is most appropriate for the easiest kind of escape? So that's your where to. You find the victim, you protect her till they can get outside. The third type of story we want to tell is the discovery type. Now, when your characters engage on a discovery, they have to decide if it's for themselves or for others. Now, you can decide for them if it's for themselves or for others. But if they can, because in most situations, in many cases really, your characters will get information from an external source. And this external source may suggest that they get on a discovery. And this suggestion will create some form of confusion. Are the characters getting through this discovery path because they're looking for a reward? Or are they going through this discovery path because they need to discover something for themselves? So is the reward external or internal? So think about this degree of suggestion that an external character, maybe an antagonist, maybe a supporter, may go through with them. When they decide if they're doing this for themselves or for someone else, and clearly it will be difficult to define it in the very beginning of the discovery type of episode, or if it the very beginning of your series, the very beginning of your story. But once they've decided that, they have to find the object, the location, maybe the person that they're supposed to look for. And what is it? It's the first question you have to ask yourself. What's the nature of this thing? What's the nature of this object we're looking for? And where is it likely to be? If it is a location itself, it's easy to find it, because now we tell you, okay, you have a location to find, and in this location, you have nothing specific to find, just the location. You look for the territory, the new territory. You check if it's safe for us to go there and then gather resources, or maybe this external source, this external individual will not even tell them about the resources that they're going to exploit in this new location, but they're just telling them, okay, find this new location, it will help us. We know approximately where it is, but we need an exact mapping maybe of the location. We need the exact coordinates of the location. We need to know if it's safe to get there. That's what a discovery mission implies. Once your character arrives at the location, once your character arrives before the item, the object they're supposed to discover, they're supposed to find, they have multiple possibilities. The 3 main ones are resting. Their mission is now finished. Now they can even contact the person and tell them, okay, it's there, but they can stay in the place they're found. They can go deeper. For example, if your characters are given this mission by a company, by a corporation, that your characters know that this corporation is looking after a specific resource, it may imply that this specific territory contain this specific resource, so your character can go deeper in the territory and look for the resource themselves and maybe get a bonus or maybe capsize some of the resource from themselves. And they can go. Now, the departure is also an option. Now your character has discovered the location of a specific item, they can go. Just they can quit the location if there's no other interest in this location for them. Of course, now that's the possibility for you to branch your story. If your character decides to rest, they can be attacked, or they can be moved away by the company. If you want to go deeper, they can also be enter in conflict with the company or with another organization which was established there in secrecy. If they try to depart, they can be restrained because now they've discovered this location. Maybe the company, maybe the sponsor doesn't want them to go away. Maybe they want to silence them. So it all depends in the end of this new object, this new item, this new location, this new relationship established. The relationship established with the sponsor, but also the relationship established with maybe the inhabitant of the location, with the location itself, and with the resources eventually, and or an unexpected item, an unexpected item which was found by your team that the sponsor wasn't expecting to find either. It can be a third party. The fourth type of story that you want to tell is the collecting type. Now, collecting objects may be originating from a sponsor, but it's not the only way. In most cases, it's easier if someone contacts your team, contacts your protagonist or your supporter, and ask them to collect something for them. Now, collecting does not necessarily imply to get the items back, but we'll get to that at the end of this section. The sponsor may be asking them directly, or she may be implying that she needs something, and then your character can take the initiative to propose her to retrieve it for her. Or at least to retrieve them and eventually keep them for themselves. But the collecting is mostly about finding the items. Now, we're looking for a collection of items, so multiple items. In most cases, these many items will be separated. And in most cases, if you want to maximize the impact of your conflicts, you want to give them multiple owners. Now, if you give them multiple owners, you have to ask yourself, how are you going to retrieve them? Because these owners may forfeit them because the items in question may be causing them trouble, but if they aren't, if they are attached to these items, you have to establish how you're going to retrieve them, how you're going to get them. Now, you also want to ask yourself, what if the items don't belong to anyone, but the items are hidden? Because here, if you want to maximize the length of this episode, you want to separate the items. And if you don't want to create an opposition directly between your team and another kind of character or another group of character, you want just maybe to hide the items. Now, you want to think about the relationship between the sponsor, the original character who gave you the mission, your team, and also the diverse owners, if there are owners. Now you've established the relationship between the characters present here. Where are the objects? Or at least where they are in a broad sense, because if they're hidden, you have to find them more accurately, more precisely. You need to ask yourself, how do I get them back together? Or do I get them back at all? Because it is necessary. You may only need to collect the object, but not necessarily to get them back to the sponsor. Now, if you need to get them back, the delivery of these items will need to be performed in a certain manner, because the sponsor may need them because she needs the items, she has an emotional attachment to the item, or she may need the item because she needs to use them. Now, are they still usable? If they are, and they need to be transported back to the owner in a certain manner, how should they be transported? How should they be stored? Because these items, they have specific properties, they have specific weaknesses. And if they're particularly fragile, for example, you have to think about how you need to store them, because if your characters have get them from owners, or if they have found them, maybe now on the return path they're going to be attacked by these precedent owners, or they can be attacked by a third party, a new party. So you have to store the items in order to protect them and to get them back to the sponsor. The fifth type of story you want to conduce will be an investigation. Now, you may have realized that in most of these cases, in most of these paths, in most of these stories, we only have a relative information concerning the location. We never have, in the beginning of the story, an absolute location of the item we're looking for, the person we're looking for. It is even truer in investigations, because in investigation, the location will be even more prevalent. Now, where does the investigation begin? Where has the crisis happened? These are the two main questions you want to ask yourself during the whole investigation. If you want more information on how to conduce an investigation for a story, how to write it, we're gonna give you a link now to a full detailed guide. So now, just let's focus on these two questions. Where is this happening? And what is happening? Which kind of crisis? As you advance through the crisis, you'll become more aware of the danger the location is presenting and the individual responsible for the crisis is representing. Now, the crisis may be accidental. The crisis may be occurring without the will of anyone, but they'll still be responsible. Now, in all cases, there will not necessarily be a perpetrator, but someone will be taken responsible for the crisis. So, considering that we are in a crisis, what are the dangers in this location? How can we conduce our investigation while remaining safe? And who are the potential, the established, and the future victims here? So, in order to establish the relationship between the different kind of protagonists here, the different kind of characters here, you have to classify them. So you have your investigator, and your investigator may not be your protagonist. In most cases, it's easier this way, but it may be another character, a tertiary character. And then your protagonist may suggest ideas to the investigator. The second category of character here are victims. Now, certain characters will become more passive as the story advances, as the investigation advances, but you can make them start passive by defining them as victims. And the third category is the perpetrators. Now, we're using the plural form here because you don't know how many perpetrators there are in the beginning. It may be a single individual, or it may be a group, as you choose the scale of your story. For example, if you were implying highly at the end of your story that it's a group of perpetrators, your story can be scaled up now. It can be lengthened, it can be stretched in multiple episodes, and you can have multiple investigations. Now we've established the danger. You're looking for clues. Remember that you've defined multiple categories of characters in the beginning. You have an investigator, which may or not be your main character. To some extent, your main character is investigator as well, but there may be an official investigator, a part of the government, part of the army, another investigator, which is established as the investigator in the beginning. You can have victims. You have victims, which may be civilians, whichever profession they're exerting really, does not define them as victims specifically. And you have your perpetrators, which may be, for some, defined since the beginning, because you may have an intuition. Now, as your investigation advances, you'll have to redefine each character in each category. Maybe the investigator is the perpetrator. Maybe the investigator, and here I mean the external investigator, not your main character, is a victim because she can't do much. No, maybe she's unable to conduce a fair investigation, and she is a victim herself, or she will become a victim of the perpetrator. Now, say for the victims, the ones you've established as victims in the beginning may be the perpetrators themselves, or they may be accomplices. And as you advance, you'll make use of testimonies, but you'll also make use of environmental narration. You know, what's present in the room, what's missing in the room, in each room of the location you're in. And you want to take into account these two dimensions, you know, time and space, in a very broad manner in the beginning. So you need a plan of the building, because often it's in an enclosed environment, but it works outside as well. You just have to define the limits, the highly likely limits of the location, and you have to define a chronological realization of all the events. So once you've gathered the clues and you requalified each of the individuals in their due roles, you're able to solve the crisis, to solve the eventual crime. Now, who is the perpetrator indeed? Did you find her? Could you stop her? Was she alone? Did she have accomplices? All this, and this may be why the investigation type of story is the most flexible one here, because you can really stretch it. Contrary to all the other stories, all the other episode patterns here, you can really rely on the lack of information. You can really rely on the deficit of information for this specific type of story. The sixth type of story you're going to want to tell is a tale of negotiation. Now, that's an unusual type of story. It's not a type of story you'll find often, because it may be considered as less appealing as the other five. Now, how do you make it appealing? And, well, what's a negotiation? As you're negotiating with one other party, two other parties, multiple other parties, whichever the negotiation here, whichever the level of emergency is, you always have the same goal. You want to guide a certain individual or a group of individuals to a certain outcome. An outcome which would be, in most cases, satisfactory. Satisfactory for most of the participants, if possible everyone, but most of the participants. So you have to take care of the asymmetry of satisfaction here. Supposing you have four organizations which are negotiating. These four organizations, which you're part of one. So let's suppose you have your organization, the organization of a future supporter, the organization of the established antagonist, and the organization of an hidden antagonist, which are regrouping here. So you know who are the potential supporters and who are the potential opponents. You really have a deficit of information when it comes to the hidden antagonist, because you don't know who she is. You may think she's a supporter potentially, or you may think she's neutral. So when it comes to satisfaction, you want to think about the symmetry of satisfaction and the accomplishment of all the acts during the negotiation through free will. This is a pattern you want to establish for the whole process. Now, identify the stakeholders. Who are they? What are the stakes for each of them? And what are the relationship between each of the stakeholders? So let's suppose we still have our four organizations. Yours, the organization of a future supporter, the organization of a future antagonist, which is obvious, and the organization of a future antagonist, which is hidden. What are the relationship between these four organizations? No, let alone the relationship between you, the four characters. What do the organization try to obtain? And what do the individuals conducing the negotiation, or the four negotiators, try to obtain? Once you've established the stakes and the goal, you'll need to develop a degree of empathy which is proportional to the degree of satisfaction you want to obtain through the negotiation and in the outcome. Now, empathy here means listening and repeating strategically. You want to target your listening and you want to target your repetition. You want to focus your listening on what the other members of your own organization want and what the members of all the opposing organizations want. So you need an internal level of listening and an external level of listening, because you want to manage conflict in a satisfying manner. You're the negotiator. Now, repetition is the same thing. If you can identify certain words, certain patterns, certain set of words, just repeat in the terms of the opposing organization or the other member of your own organization. You are looking for intelligence, and empathy here is your best way to develop your intelligence efficiently. The very fact that you're able to identify the stakeholder and empathize with them will lead you to a more satisfactory outcome. Not necessarily the most symmetrical level of satisfaction, but a satisfyingly enough level of symmetry. Now, all the organization present should be aware that they will not be able, all of them, to reach the outcome they wanted in the early stages of the negotiation. But they may also be aware that they will be able to reach, all of them, the outcome they needed in the end of the negotiation. So you need, as most often, to establish that balance between wants and needs in order to define the level of symmetry in terms of satisfaction between your four organizations. If you like this video and want more of this type of content, check our video on the 6 surefire ways to create a story.